So when you were involved with your ex and you were involved in the cocaine game, I mean, the cartels, what was it like back then? I mean, that led up to you getting arrested. I mean, how?
So I was, I was born in West Texas. When I was 10, we went to Jersey. And my father was a pastor growing up. I grew up, I mean, literally cattle, cowboy boots, guns, all those kinds of, and my father was a pastor.
Yeah.
So we lived in a small town in West Texas. I had, social status. I had clout. The prettiest girl in the grade was my girlfriend. I felt like I was special.
Yeah.
And we get to New Jersey, and it was the first time in my life that I ever felt inferior. And it wasn't because the kids were tougher than me, smarter than me, anything. They had money and my family didn't have money. So I, at a very young age, became insecure all because of money and thought that how much you possessed in life is what defined you, is what gave you value. And so we were in Jersey. I started smoking weed when I was in high school. I wasn't scared to go into Harlem and all these bad neighborhoods back in New York back in the day. What I found out is that if you went to certain spots, they wanted all the Jersey kids to come in and buy as much weed as possible because they were making money.
Yeah.
And so you could literally be walking on the block. There was this one dude, Magic Mystic. He was up, it's been a long time, 125th and Edgecombe, I think is what it was. You would go up there and you would have to park your car a couple blocks away from a spot, and you'd be walking back to the car and people might come up to you, like run your pockets, and all of a sudden there'd be a dude in the doorway to pop up and they'd be like, yo, those are Mystics customers. And they'd be like, all right, cool. So he legitimately had like a good operation. So, I mean, whatever, it was still Harlem back in the day. Like that shit was still crazy. I'm not saying it was tame, but at least, you know what I mean? Like you felt more protected. So I would go in there, buy weed, you could get a dime bag, bring it to Jersey and sell it for $20. So I started doing that in high school. Went to San Antonio when I was 18, and I remember at the time a pound of swag in Jersey was going for $1,200. Everybody and their mother had a connection to get pounds. Like, you want 1,000 pounds of weed? Cool. They could make a fucking phone call and have 1,000 pounds of weed. And it was going anywhere from $300, $350 a pound. Wow. And you heard about it on the border. On the other side of the secondary checkpoints, it was going for $50 a pound. So I'm down there at 18 years old, just dollar signs are going off. It took me I think I was down there like 3 months. I called up my old boy in Jersey, who was my old dealer. We became friends. And I told him, I was like, dude, you get a pound down here that's fire for $350. And he's just like, let's do something. So that was the first time that I started sending things out of state. And this is how I tell things. Like in California, everybody learns how to grow weed, right? In New York, everybody learns how to hustle. Everybody learns how to get rid of it. In San Antonio, everybody learns how to traffic. And if you really understand the drug game, trafficking is the most important part. It's where you can make the most money. It doesn't matter how much, drugs you have over here and how many people you have willing to buy them. If you can't connect those two dots, then you can't make money. So I understood that early on. And in San Antonio, it's just the trafficking is a part of the culture. So you learn like what a clavo is, which is, Mexican slang for like a hidden compartment. and years later, from the shit that I learned being down there in between 18 to 22, years later, I used that to be able to get a shit ton of weed. I don't know if you got to be familiar with Northern California and the Triangle.
Yeah. I used to live in Santa Rosa.
Yeah. So, well, Santa Rosa, you were good. But from Santa Rosa to Eureka, that was the fucking gauntlet. And you better know what the fuck you were doing back in the day. So I used the trafficking skills that I acquired being down there, learning from, like Mexican traffickers, to years later, literally be able to make millions of fucking dollars getting weed down off the mountain when other people couldn't do it.
Yeah, because you couldn't even go. Like you had Santa Rosa, then you had Guerneville, and then I knew people that lived in Humboldt.
Yep.
But like, dude, you couldn't even go up there.
No.
Like especially, and I'm just gonna keep it 100.
You get pulled over going up there,
dude. They everybody knows everybody.
Yep.
The sheriffs up there are in on it, and then on top of it, like, I knew somebody, but there's not a lot of black guys because they scare you jacket.
Of course,
you rob it. Literally. And people I think it's racist, but they're like, dude, who's this dude?
Yeah.
So I had to get vouched from this dude to even be cool and, know somebody, because they didn't mess around, man. It's like, by the time they got to Oakland or Frisco, you had to know a white dude that got it to one of them dudes, and it was cool. But, man, they weren't even connected to the connect.
Yeah.
Because those are old families. This is like straight mafia up there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, did you ever watch Murder Mountain?
I never watched
on Netflix. Oh, you got to watch that. That's good, man. It's about Alder Point up there. It's right on the edge of, I believe, Humboldt and Trinity. My connect was up in Trinity. I used to go up there all the time, but everybody knew about Alder Point in Humboldt Mountain.
Oh, wow.
And it's about the guy, Garrett Rodriguez, that went missing up there. And they used Garrett's story to bring light to how many people went up there and went missing. I do think that the documentary was a little bit sensationalized. I used to love actually going to like Grass Valley and around that area off the Sierra Nevada instead of the coastal mountains, because it wasn't as hot and it was easier to get things back. But there was still more weed and there was still better weed up in the Triangle. So as soon as I figured out the transportation, that's where I was fucking around a lot. But before I had that figured out, I was going up there to the Sierra Nevadas just because it was so much easier coming back.
Isn't that so crazy, man? Like you said, the logistics and all that. Because I did time in Grass Valley because there was a fire camp up there.
Okay,
Washington Ridge. So I spent a couple years up there. I used to cut fire lines. I worked on the digging snow. I've been
so
cold. Oh my God, yeah. But you never know though. Like there was a guy who used to come visit me in there, and he was like one of those like a community helper.
Okay.
And old dude, he was compassionate, would take us out to the Grass Valley downtown to go eat and hang out by the little lake. And come to find out, back in the day, when they used to do weed busts, they would take it to the dump to the burn area to burn, but they light it and they leave. They'll leave burn on top. He would come in and take the bottom, and he was like, he made a lot of money because he turned around and redistributed. So like people like that town, very quiet, nondescript. You go up, people very nice. Looks like going back in time. I don't know. It's probably developed a lot because I was there in.
It's still pretty.
I was there in the early 90s, like 91, 92.
Okay.
Like, there 92, 93. I got out in 94. And, but yeah, like you said, man, there's a lot of money. Like those people balling.
Yeah.
Balling up there.
Well, that was before California legalized medicinal.
Yeah.
Those were the real old school rebel growers.
That's when I was back there.
They were getting caught and they were going to federal prison for it. So a lot of the people that I was buying from, it was their parents and their grandparents that were kind of the legendary growers that were growing it back in the day when you could still go to federal prison for it. But in 1996, when California legalized medicinal, everybody's getting their scripts, and that's when these giant farms
they killed all the private.
Well, no, it was still like the smaller growers. It wasn't what it is now with all the commercial bullshit. It was still, underground growers. It was medicinal. I remember in 2010, I was up there when California tried to be the first state to pass recreational, and the growers were investing their own money in flyers telling everybody, vote no, vote no, vote no, because they knew knew that it would destroy it. And sure enough, like that scene just isn't there anymore. It's been destroyed.
Yeah, because I remember in 95, 96, if you had a hookup from, like, say, Santa Rosa, you can get a hookup with a pound for like 38.
Yeah, and that was outdoor.
That's what I'm saying. That was, but you can go to Sacramento, and that shit was going for like 45.5. If you were, you were. It was, and that was like gold back then. I mean, a pound for like 35. You had a hookup, you sell it for 45. You know what I mean? So it was different. But now it ain't worth shit.
Yeah. When I started doing it, outdoor was going for about $2,000.
Wow.
And you could bring it to Texas, New York. I don't give a shit if you showed up with 1,000 pounds. You could sit there and sell 100 packs wholesale for $4,000, and people were just eating it up like fucking candy. So there was millionaires that were made overnight. You're investing $200,000, you're going right to Texas.
Wow.
You're getting $400,000. You're coming back, taking the $400,000, going back and getting $800,000. It stacks up very quickly.
So when you were in the game, as far as like, I know you said you're the coke, but the weed, was it more profitable in the marijuana game?
Oh, hell yeah, absolutely.
But it's bigger product to move, right? Because it's the bulk.
But I knew transportation.
Okay.
I knew transportation. So the first thing, I got out of prison. I didn't want to go back. When I went to prison at 22, I was on the dean's list. I had a year to go before I went to law school.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
you were gonna go to law school?
I was gonna go to law school.
Fuck.
Yeah, absolutely. I was on the dean's list. I mean, I had a year to go.
Damn.
I remember sitting in the back of the cop car and just thinking, like, it was Texas. Like I just got caught with a key. I knew I was going to prison. And I remember
Texas ain't no joke, bro.
Yeah, well, especially up there in Lubbock, the Bible Belt.
Yeah, I've been to Lubbock.
Yeah,
I've been there. Lubbock
don't get caught with a key.
Dude, Lubbock. me and my partner, we watch Landman in Midland, Texas.
Yep.
And I flew into the Lubbock airport in a twin prop.
Yeah.
And we were driving. I'm like, man, ain't shit out here.
Yeah.
No joke.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where I got caught. So I remember thinking, okay, I'm never gonna do this again. I'm gonna make the best of this situation. And I mean, I was in prison. I read and I read and I read and I read and I read. My college professors, because I was a criminal justice major, pre-law, whatever you want to call it, they came to see me. I corresponded with Dr. Allison Liebling. She was the head of the Cambridge criminological department. I did like criminological research on prison gangs while I was in there. Could have gotten it published. I wanted to go to graduate school when I got out and get a PhD in criminology. So I got out of prison, made the president's list, straight A's, working a really good job. And I didn't want to go to graduate school right away because I thought about it, 3 to 4 years of getting a master's and a PhD. I felt like I went in at 22, you know what I mean? I just did 5 years. So I just was like, you know what? I'm going to hang out for a couple years, kind of live my life, and I'll go to graduate school when I'm 30. So I went to California to visit my sister for my birthday. Absolutely loved it. Went back. This is before San Francisco was the fucking shithole that it is now.
I grew up there. I used to live there.
It used to be an amazing city. It used to be an amazing city. Yeah,
dude, I had the best times there.
Yeah, it was perfectly permissive. It wasn't, too strict, but there wasn't people using heroin. And there wasn't human shit on the sidewalk. Yeah, it's sad how they fucked that city up. But I went there, went back to Texas, and said, okay, I have to go live there. So I went there. Got a job at a Porsche and an Audi dealership.
Oh man, you were living a life.
Dude, I fucking made 10 grand my first month. I made 10 grand my second month. I was about to make $25,000.
Flipping Porsches and Audis, huh?
Porsches and Audis, but in the state of California and their wonderful wisdom, you have to have a sales license. So how it works is I got hired, I went to the DMV. I filled out the application to get my temporary sales license. I was legally allowed to work under my temporary sales license. And then it was like 2 months and 3 days or 2 months and 5 days, they denied my sales license. And I was on cloud 9. I worked from 12 to 7, had an hour for lunch. There was no manager barking down your neck. It was like, you want to make money, you make money. I was driving Porsches and Audis home. And I was proud of myself. I said, you know what? I set goals. I said, I'm never going back to prison. And I did it. And it's just kind of that just validation where you're telling yourself, you know what? Society told me I'm a piece of shit. The criminal justice system told me I'm a piece of shit. I'm not worth anything. But you know what? I am worth something. I set goals. I had standards. So I'm going to live by these principles, and I fucking did it. So I was on cloud 9. And I remember the owner, the general manager and the assistant manager didn't tell the owner that I had a record because I thought he might care. He got the letter from the DMV saying that I couldn't work there. He called them up there and said, get an attorney. I don't care what we have to do. He's the best salesman we have. Let's do whatever we can to help him. And he called me up to the office, shook my hand, personally signed my last paycheck, and said, I have no choice. And he said, you get this situated. He said, you always have a job here. So that, I won't even lie, man. I went into my car and I probably cried for about 5 fucking minutes. And it fucking hurt because it wasn't that I couldn't find an employer for a successful profession to hire me. I had someone that was willing to fight to have me there, and I was honest. I don't care if I saw your social security number. Like, I'm not a fraud. I don't do fraud. I don't do things like that. I was honest. And the other thing too is, to me, it wasn't just selling someone a car. A lot of those people that were coming in there, it was their first nice car. They had gotten a job in Silicon Valley. So you were getting to share these special moments with people. So it really meant something to me. And like I said, I conducted myself with honesty. The reason why I was able to sell so many cars is because I wasn't trying to jerk people around. I wasn't trying to hit them up. I would take them outside and say, hey, pull up your phone. This is Edmund's true market value. If you tell the finance manager, I'm telling you this, you're going to get me fired. That's what you should pay for this car. And they would be like, wow. And they would go in there. They would have a 5-minute conversation with the finance manager, and they'd come out, and the deal would be done. And the finance manager always say, like, man, like, your deals always go really fast. And I'm sitting there thinking, you know what? Because I'm not trying to be a dishonest piece of shit and beat everybody over the fucking head. It's like, just be honest about what a fair price is. And so I was proud of myself how I conducted that job. And so it fucking hurt to get that taken from me. And I cried for probably about 5 minutes, and then I just shook it off and said, you know what, fuck it. Like, I'm not gonna let them stop me. I'm gonna find something better. And so I was looking for other jobs, and I got this interview at AXA Financial Services. and went in. It was a group interview. And there's all these kids that just graduated with MBAs, Wharton School of Business, Michigan.
Damn.
And I'm sitting there like, there is no fucking way in hell I'm getting this job. I've got a record. I don't have an MBA. So they do the group interview. They ask us, all our individual questions, kind of going back and forth, having a conversation. And then he said, okay, we'll be in touch with all you guys. And everybody's walking out of the room, and the guy who was doing the interview came over and he tapped me on the elbow and he said, just gave me that look. And I was just like, okay, cool. So we let everybody walk out. And as soon as everybody walked out, he looked at me and was like, with enthusiasm, he goes, you have what it takes to do this job. He goes, this job is going to change your life. He said, for the first 4 years, you're going to make $100,000 a year. You're going to work 18-hour days. You're going to hate life. He said, but your 5th year, you will become a millionaire. He said, this will change your life. He said, it was like 98% of people that make it to their 5th year never do anything else again. And he just kept on saying, like, you have what it takes to do this job. And so I told him right away, I said, look, I have a record. I've been to federal prison. And he told me, he said, I don't care. He goes, if you can get bonded and pass your Series 7 and your Series 63, he goes, you have a job. And of course, I couldn't get bonded because of my record. So that, that hurt once again. And finally, 9 months later, I got a hearing with an administrative law judge for the state of California to have an appeal hearing for my sales license. And I went in a suit. I defended myself. I embarrassed that prosecutor. The people in the courtroom stood up and clapped for me. It was just a passionate appeal of saying, I want to be a contributing member of society. I want this job. I love this job. There's signs of rehabilitation. And if you look at the record and you see that there's enough signs of rehabilitation, you can grant this appeal. And she said, no, there's not enough signs of rehabilitation. And I remember walking out of that courtroom and just taking off the tie. And it was just like a light switch. And I just said, fuck it. And boom, right back into it. And it was probably within, I don't know, maybe a month, maybe 2 months, was making $100,000 a month. And was just, like I said, it was the gold rush or the green rush, whatever you want to call it, where you could just make bank from sending weed. At first I started doing it in Texas. That's where I had contacts. And like I said, it didn't take me a long time to get up to like $100K a month. And at that time, I had known other people that were already sending loads to Texas. So they had a couple different drivers, and it was always diesel trucks, Rams. And the reason why is because if you go and you look at the highway, even if you're a Ford fan or a Chevy fan, if you're a hot shot, if you're doing anything on the highway, everybody gets the Ram for the Cummins because it's a 1,000,000-mile motor. So when the DPS or highway patrol are looking at the cars going by, in the back of their mind, they've just seen 100 of them, and they think that individual has a reason for being on the highway. And that's where people fuck up when they're trafficking, is that they don't have a viable reason for being on the highway. So as soon as they get pulled over, your story doesn't
add up.
Yeah, it doesn't add up. But I remember the first time that driver, I went to San Antonio to wait for the load, and the driver showed up, and he was fucking crazy. He had Arizona plates, big bright red Ram 3500, had a special Clavo built in the back. He could hold 300 pounds. And he would be loaded down with 300 pounds. He'd do like 85, 90 miles an hour because he looked like a cop. He had the whole like fire, it was like fire department plates on it. He'd get pulled over and they'd be like, all right, cool, go on your way. So I open up the door and I'm looking at this dude and I was just like, I thought he was a cop. I was like, there, put the cuffs on, fuck it. And he started laughing. I was just joking with him, but I mean, I really was nervous. I really thought like, oh my God, my first fucking load to Texas and I'm about to get fucking caught. But he was just this badass fucking driver because he looked like a cop. But that dude, he went by the name of Cowboy, and he was greedy, and he was working for this really, really big organization up there. And it was something maybe like $500,000 that he was supposed to bring back to California. And it was right north of Grass Valley. I think San Juan is where it was. That's where that like whole organization was. So this dude goes missing for maybe like a week, and they're thinking like, something bad happened. Well, he left $500,000 in the back of his truck, and the truck had to get fixed. The mechanic shop saw it, sees the $500,000, calls the police. They see that because you're close to the border. You're not thinking it's weed from California. They thought it was something coming from Mexico. So the DEA immediately got involved. So the DEA immediately gets involved. They send him up there. He drops the money off at the house where all the weed was and they were making oil. And the one dude who was in charge of the whole organization, he knew something was off right away because Cowboy knew that was like the number one rule, never have the money where the work is actually at. So he just drops off the money and takes off. And then sure enough, the cops come in. But it was state police. It was state police and like the sheriff's department. And I remember I wasn't directly connected to that organization, but I was loosely connected to that organization. Everybody was shitting their pants. And I told everybody, I said, I am telling you right now, because this was right at the end where the feds still were investigating marijuana. I said, this is a federal case. This is how they operate. They're just using the sheriffs to build the federal investigation. And I'm telling you right now, federal sealed indictments are about to come down. And I really knew that when they gave a special bail enhancement, it was something like, $1 million. It was like for fucking weed in Northern California. And then sure enough, boom, all these federal indictments start to come out because of it. And that guy was who was in charge of that whole organization. He went to federal prison, went to FCI Bastrop for 8 fucking years for weed. And that was right at the end where the feds stopped prosecuting marijuana. So about 2 years later, I get on a private jet with 109 pounds of weed from Oakland and was flying to Teterboro. And at the time, I was like, it was the first time I got on a private jet. I had other transportation means, but I was just like, you know what? Everybody wants to do the private jet. I met someone that told me they could broker it and they knew what they were doing. So I get on the plane. And I'm just thinking like, it's 100 pounds. If I get caught, it's a manageable loss. I'll get probation. Like, come on, it's 100 pounds of weed. Who cares? Well, turns out that the pilot was a snitch for the DEA. So yeah, as they're loading the containers, he's inside calling his handler. So we fly from Oakland to Teterboro. I get off, the DEA's there waiting. They're questioning me, asking me if they can search the containers. I said, no, you can't search the containers. And I asked them, I said, no, am I being detained? I knew my rights. And so I wasn't detained. I was allowed to leave, but they kept the containers. I went into New York. I was able to ditch the tail because they were just waiting for the drug dog to show up so they would have probable cause to when obviously they were going to arrest me. But I found out years later from the discovery that I had lost the tail in New York when I hopped into a taxi. So took off to Connecticut, got in my Jeep like a bat out of hell, just driving 100 miles an hour, left, right, still thinking they were following me, but they weren't. And then I get a call from the DEA agent. He says, hey, the drug dog just got here. They sit on the containers. We need you to come turn yourself in. And I was just like, I'll be right there. So I was on the run for 3 years. The U.S. Marshal who was after me had the biggest fucking hard on for me. And he created the Northern California top 10 most wanted list so that I could be on it. He would have more agents and more funds to try to find me. And I remember having numerous friends tell me like, oh yeah, this was years later when I got back. I had a few friends, and I had one guy I was actually working with while he was out there. It didn't happen, but they were all telling me stories about seeing my face on a billboard. My one friend, she told me she was driving through downtown Oakland, and she was there with her dad, and she was talking, and she kind of looks up on the billboard, and there's my fucking face, Northern California's top 10 most wanted. And she just froze, and her dad was looking at her like, are you okay? And she was like, I'm fine. She told me about that years later. But yeah, so I was on the run for 3 years. They finally caught up with me in Colorado. And the crazy thing is that, dude, when I was on the run, I sold more weed being on the run than I did before that, because I knew every day could be my last, and I was just trying to save up money so when I got out, I would have something. Because I wasn't scared of going back to prison. I was scared of losing the money because I was scared of ultimately losing my identity. And it wasn't until I lost everything where I finally went back to prison that I don't know if you ever heard about going through a dark night of the soul, but they say when you go through a dark night of the soul, you experience total annihilation. So all of the lies and all the bullshit that you fed yourself, it's just completely and totally stripped away. And it's just, you have to go through that experience where you're left with absolutely nothing. You're stripped of all the defense mechanisms. You expose your bullshit and see how you've been lying to yourself for so many years. And I remember it's just like, I felt like I was always, running from a monster, running from a demon. And I finally realized, like what I was running from when I lost everything. And it was running from feeling like I didn't have an identity, and it was all tied to material wealth and things of that nature. So it was a horrible fucking experience, but it was also was also enlightening. And I would say that it's, it's from that experience that I've since been able to go forward and really, recognize why I went to prison the first time, had good intentions, but still, ended up going back to prison a second time, and be able to really create, a real identity that I truly do respect, that, I can say that I really do love myself, and it's not based upon an illusion, and it's not based upon these, false signals of identity like material wealth and things of that nature. So it's been a wild ride for 20 something fucking years, because I was on the run for 3 years, I was on bail for 3.5 years, and then I had to go turn myself in for 18 months. That's when I went to New Jersey State Prison.
Damn, Brian, that's a crazy story, man, and I'm sure there's so many other facets of it we could go into, but man, I look forward to having a part 2 to this, man.
I'd love to come back.
Yeah, I look forward to a part 2, and I thank you for taking the time to come out here, man, and share your story with us, man. And, man.
Well, I love what you're doing, man. Love the platform. Have the greatest respect for you and what you're doing.
Thank you, man.
Opening up eyes to people's stories that need to be told.
Yeah, and like your story, like I said, I feel like a lot of people really get into this. We're gonna get a lot of comments, and I look forward to sharing this and having if you have any social media links, we'll put them in the description.
All right.
And that way we can get people to reach out.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Until part 2.
Big Herc 916, fresh out, my man Brian.